Hello viewers, well it's time for more WRC Generations content and we're at the end of the road now. No doubt by the time many of you see this video, by the time it's edited and produced, the game will likely be released in stores, and you'll know more about the game than I do, because as I produce these early videos it's pre-patch, the game's not online, and there's a lot of features I haven't managed to test yet. So by the time you guys receive the game, it's likely I'll receive the final game as well. But I have worked on a lot of content over the past couple of months. It's been wonderful to have the access from Nacon. I really appreciate that, and the feedback that you guys have given me over the last few games. I've always forwarded that on to Nacon to try and improve this game and maximise it in every way. I'll also be talking a little bit about my journey through WRC. We're at the end of a generation of WRC games as we look forward, and I wanted to have a little chat about that. But firstly, the WRC Generations content, just a recap over that. We've had some extensive content from my first hands-on, which was a video which was just more uncut gameplay really, which was we've seen running on the Steam page, and that was an early build of the game. A lot of changes have come into the handling since then. It was much more difficult to drive on that build than you'll see in the final build. And I mean that in a positive way. There were some things that were issues in terms of car weight and the height of that weight and the braking distances. Lots of issues that have been refined and improved to make the game more playable, more intuitive, and in many ways a more authentic feeling within the world it's set. So we saw obviously the Belgium rally we've seen as well, a nice few runs across there, as well as my extensive preview which went through all of the features of the game, obviously at a very early stage. Again, there is so much in this package still to be explored and still to be tested. As I make this video, it was a comprehensive video. From there, I answered your questions. I intended to answer more of your questions, but some things came up which meant I wasn't able to run more videos at the time, and you won't be seeing me on videos for a little while. And then of course we have the controller gameplay. I do get asked a lot by viewers about playing with a controller. I do find it varies on the controller. I found it easier to play with a Nacon controller and the Xbox controller than I did say with the PS5 controller. I don't necessarily like the haptic response. There is a kind of juddering from the brake in terms of the haptics. I'm not necessarily keen on that. I would prefer a softer, more spongy brake pedal that has some resistance to it. We've also had Walter White in WRC Generations. Why? Because I had a mad moment. And of course the Night Rally gameplay to answer your questions there. Then a lot of work went into the locations video. This was a passion project, if you like. People say in comments, oh, the game's not improved, it's the same game every year, graphics are terrible, all this kind of nonsense. And I look at it and think these stages are the best WRC stages we've ever had. And they don't just design them in one time of day, it's different times of day, different weather conditions, the amount of work that goes into producing these stages, an investment and the years of planning, and the ability to do this year in, year out. There's only a short time of development producing an annual release, and the changes you see on WRC are way beyond that of other annual releases. I mean, it's been a staggering amount of work, and I'll come back to that. But the locations really are one of the strongest aspects of WRC. I love racing these rallies. Every year they've got a more authentic feeling, and of course we culminate in the Sweden rally, which is new this year, and it just shows how that technology and that design and that artistic mindset has moved forward in producing ever more realistic stages for the current gen. So if you think this is an Xbox One, PlayStation 4 format game, no doubt next gen will suddenly see a big step forward in that, but a cracking job. Also the cars as well. Now again, these were early versions of cars. There's still work in progress on a lot of them, but I wanted to share them and show you the sort of range that's in there. And again, you know, probably the second best, or maybe I don't know if it's the best or second best ever range of cars in a rally game. Certainly the best range of locations ever. So in terms of the package, it's a cracking package, and it's going to keep you going. And then more recently, the content has thinned a bit due to a couple of reasons, but at the same time, hour-long videos going through Rally New Zealand, Again, the stages you've seen before, but graphically touched up, and of course with the new physics and the new car handling, which is a bit more fluid now. And of course, more recently, Rally Spain, which is obviously tarmac rally, tarmac physics. There's lots in there to feel good about. I personally would like a little bit more detail on the tarmac. I'd like a little bit more detail, a lot more detail on the force feedback on the wheel. But either way, the car goes where I expect it to go. It really is just the feeling from the ground. It would be nice to have a bit more tactile feeling from all of that. So stages are great. The car sounds, we're going to come back to that on another video, but it's going to be, I mean, you have Dirt Rally, which is the benchmark. We have to mention that because Dave Sullivan and his team do an incredible job at Codemasters. But in terms of the improvements to the sounds, there has been improvements. I still quite like the sounds in WRC 9. I think WRC 9 had a lot going for it in terms of audio. It seemed to take a step backward in WRC 10, and I think in WRC Generations it's getting there again. But I still prefer WRC 9 sounds in so many ways. I thought it's a shame they didn't layer it and build on that rather than picking the slate clean and seemingly starting again. The cars aren't necessarily the issue, it's more environmental effects and stuff like that. It's complex sound, it's a lot more complex than people realise. You don't just record a car and integrate it. It's a lot more complex, and the same with the physics and all the elements that are happening, live objects. It's a hell of a process, and it's an artistic process as well. So sometimes you have to integrate things that make people feel like they're in a rally car. You might not necessarily hear that in a real rally car, but because you hear it on the TV coverage, you have to look at the point of reference. So as a gamer, a lot of people on Twitter and YouTube, you say, what's your point of reference? Either I've watched the rally car on TV, I've heard onboard coverage on YouTube, or I've been to a rally. These are all very different sounds that you're going to be hearing. The rally cars are way louder than anything else you hear on TV. The onboard sounds depend greatly on the microphone you're hearing. Often it's compressed. Sometimes it's just a terrible microphone, and that's your point of reference. And of course then you have the different layers of sounds as well, the gearbox aspects to do with the exhaust engine, and combining and along with the new electrical servos and elements there as well. So, and along with bits squeaking and shaking in the car, seat belts, whatever it is, who knows, there's all kinds of things bending and creaking when you're bouncing around with gravel and stones hitting the car, and bits going through the brakes, and it's a maelstrom of sound. It's almost hard to take in when you're actually in a rally car, because when you're in a rally car you're focused either so much on what you're doing with the driving, or if you're in the passenger seat you're just simply saying to yourself, oh my god, I can't believe how fast we're going. And that's kind of it with rally drivers, they never go slow. So lots of coverage to date on the game, and it's been a pleasure covering it all. And really I was in this position now where it thinned out a little bit because I was waiting for the console versions to arrive, and I had plans to do Xbox preview, PlayStation preview, side-by-side comparisons, all of that. And of course the console versions have been delayed, and that meant that I wasn't ready for the next batch of bits and pieces I had planned. So it's waiting for that now, and you'll see all of that coming on the channel as I make, well, I say right now I've got the PlayStation version as I make this video, but it still requires a day one patch to be able to show it. So there's some features missing, including the performance mode as I make this, and that is critical for me. As many of you know, I'm a 60 FPS player. Right, so we move on. WRC Generations, it's looking good. There's loads of great features in there. I think the league mode will keep us coming back. Online modes look good, as well as tons of other features that have been built up over the ages. So it's a great package, cross-play. Let's hope that keeps it going, as well as the online esports that will bring together. I suppose now let's look at my journey into WRC Generations over the years. Firstly, rather than look back at the WRC games, I did that and I put together a video called The Road to WRC, which was a video which didn't get that much exposure at the time, but it was a video that deserved, I thought, a bit more exposure, and I enjoyed it, put a lot of work into it, and it was looking back at all the WRC games up to WRC 9 at the time, and it was also showcased on the WRC channel, which was great. So if you do want to look back at the WRC games that have been, do look at that video, and it goes through the specifics of each game and the specific areas of development within each one as well. Now, of course, my final aspect, I was going to do this on camera, but I can't, unfortunately. So my journey on WRC, WRC 1, shall we say, began in 2010, visiting Milestone, seeing their rally game, playing an early version. It was great fun. It had that kind of Colin McRae / Saga Rally vibe to it on an early build, but we wanted it to be more realistic. Developers said to me, it's just an early build, there's loads more to go on the game, and 6 months later it was the same game pretty much that we tested the early build on. It wasn't terribly impressive. Rally fans weren't very happy, and I spoke to one WRC who is a WRC driver right now, and he wasn't, in expletive terms, he wasn't very happy with the game at all, and he preferred Richard Burns Rally. Richard Burns Rally, a classic game, and it will come up a lot in terms of conversation whenever you're talking about rally games, and rightly so. They didn't sell particularly well. That's a key aspect of why it didn't help SCI in that way at the time either. And many people considered it too difficult, sadly. Again, it's down to marketing as well. So WRC 10 was, for me, I got some good coverage out of it. But it wasn't a great game, didn't handle very well, had a lot of issues, didn't need the use of the handbrake, wasn't very authentic. WRC 2 came in with new stages. Again, I found it very hard to drive, but the new stages were much better, no doubt about it. There was a step forward that had been made, but the game still was very rough around the edges. There's a lot of problems with it. I can't remember all the issues at the time now. Suffice to say, I didn't play it for very long and moved on quickly on to the next, just moved on to any game to get away from it. A year later, I remember 2012 going back to Italy and seeing a version of WRC 3, and shockingly, I remember making a video. I was the first person to cover it. Again, it's one of those world exclusives where when you get a game before anyone else in the world, it's quite scary sometimes, because you know that your reputation, your opinion is on the line, and you just have to be truthful to yourself. If I enjoyed this game, I didn't enjoy this game, I say it as I see it. There's no point in thinking, when you play a game that you already know that there's a group of fans who are not, it's not for them. But you play it with an open mind, and you play it with whether you enjoyed it or not in terms of the experience and how playable and intuitive it was. And WRC 3 at that time was a big step forward, a huge step forward for Milestone, and they were moving in the right direction. And then you had the overhead version as well for a power drive, I can't remember now. And then of course moving on to WRC 4, they built on that, and it really felt like, hang on a minute, Milestone are going in the right direction now. Their technology is improving, their understanding of rally is improving, everything is going in the right direction. And WRC 4 was a lot of fun to play. A lot of people were enjoying it, and the stages were getting better, they were getting more authentic, it was going in the right direction. But then Milestone lost the franchise, and it went to an unknown studio, Kiloton Studio, made a mere motorbike game, and it wasn't terribly impressive. And we saw the trailer for WRC 5. I remember discussing it on the podcast, and the trailer was terrible. It was one of the worst trailers you've ever seen for a game. The frame rate must have been below 10 frames per second, and it was shocking. It really wasn't fit for purpose. Going along, I eventually went to the rally in Germany. Went to Rally Germany 2015, and again watched the real rally drivers on there, met the physics developers and different developers who worked on the game. And actually, the game itself was fun to play in its own way. It wasn't going to win any awards for being the most realistic rally game ever. Given the fact they had very limited time, the developers did very well. but it was clear that to build the rally game they want would take many years. There just wasn't the time available to build it. But it was a game I had a lot of fun on. I enjoyed racing it, and I enjoyed the stages. The physics were approachable, and I think going back now, you realise actually it's still quite a fun game to play in its own way. It might not be authentic, but in many respects it might be quite bare bones in terms of the menus and other aspects, but it was a fun game. WRC 6 passed me by. There was a lot of stuttering in terms of the graphics, especially on the console versions. For me, it didn't build on WRC 5 in any way. In many respects, I remember on the podcast, I enjoyed it the least out of the team at the time. Other members of the team enjoyed it more than I did. It just wasn't what I wanted from a rally game. It needed a big step forward, and I felt that, yes, the first game had very limited development, but the second game, we really need a break. They need to move forward. And in WRC 7, I remember visiting E3, so our E3, and I saw it there, and I thought, my goodness me, that looks stunning. And they had a triple screen display. I jumped on, immediately intuitive, immediately able to drive the car and understand what was going on, and I thoroughly enjoyed WRC 7. It was a great game, some great stages. However, away after release, I don't know what happened on the version I was playing, and I forget what format, but there were some handling changes, and then that put me off the game. I stopped playing the game after a few months to whatever the handling changes were. I don't know what they were, but it was never the same for me. And then we had the 2-year wait. This was the best thing that could happen to WRC. I wish more annual franchises would do this. Just literally for a year or two, put out a upgrade pack rather than a full game, so that every 2-3 years we could get a full update on the game. And WRC 8 came out the blocks looking, sounding better than ever before. In every way they were making improvements. I mean, yes, the co-drive was still a bit of a robot, but there were improvements being made. And I remember at the time we had seen Argentina on Dirt Rally 2 and thinking, wow, that's blooming impressive. And then we were seeing Argentina on WRC 8 and thinking, actually, that looks blooming impressive as well. So it showed how the technology was moving forward rapidly at Kiloton, and the investment Nacon were making into moving that technology forward. The game played well, it was fun to play, there was a lot of really good aspects in there that I enjoyed at the time, and the Argentina stages really captured me. I had great fun on those, and it built a whole new audience. Where do we go from here when we're moving forward? Well, we move on to WRC 9, and everything's a lot more polished, and the handling was refined an awful lot more as well. In many ways, for many people, WRC 9 was the best game in the series. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought the handling, especially in the classic cars, it made them much more fun to drive, and there was improvements across the board. I remember thinking this is really moving in the right direction. They're getting there now, and they know where they're going. But we need the next step if we're going to, close. If you're going to close up on Codemasters, if you're going to close up on other companies, you need those graphical steps. And 2010 achieved some of it. It was like a halfway house. There were a lot of achievements made in WRC 10. I can see where they were going with the audio. They were trying for a much clearer, cleaner type of audio. There are some aspects that are very good. There are some aspects not so good, and I preferred the sounds and some of the effects and the lighting and the colours more in 9 than 10. It wasn't balanced in the way we'd have liked, but this is the problem with an annual release. When you're trying to do a lot in a short window, sometimes you're going to end up with something that is halfway there, if you like. And this is where WRC Generations comes in. The extra time the developers have had, they've had time now to really improve upon that. So we'll come back to that shortly. So WRC 9 to 10, there were lots of changes, and of course we also had the WRC Esports as well, which I competed in, which was the WRC Esports Invitational in Monaco, and that was great fun for me. I remember having a bit of a time out at the time, coming back and enjoying that. And like you say, getting beaten by Greek man, but that's okay. It was good fun with all the competitors, and it enabled me to really get it back into a bit of esports myself and get that vibe. It's very different playing WRC when you have no restarts. And quite often people say, hey, I could do better than that. Well, could you do better when you've got a crowd, you're being streamed on the net, and you have no restarts and very little practice? It's a lot more difficult than it looks. It's very easy to make mistakes in rally. You need to get your head into the right place, very relaxed, to make clean runs on WRC. It really is about a clear mind and a focus on only what you need to focus on. And in fact, for me, my mind wandered a couple of points, and that's where I made a couple of mistakes, and unfortunately that's what cost me. But I was very happy with the way it all went, and it was good fun. Attending the actual WRC esports was also a great privilege, seeing the players at work, and I learned a lot from watching the players. You know, sometimes when you see times on the internet and you're like, how do these guys do that? And then when you're standing behind them and you're watching them do the magic that they do, you realize, wow. I mean Nexel, seeing Nexel at work is, you know, and knowing and understanding as a person who plays these games a lot, seeing what he achieved, the way he was positioning the car for the jumps, the absolute commitment to every corner. I mean, it's next level stuff, and hence he's a full-time champion now. And as it moves forward, I tell you, it's going to be extremely tough to beat him. He is an incredible competitor. Probably one of the top 5 esports players I've ever encountered in my life, and I've encountered some of the best esports players in the world on various different racing games over the years, and he's right up there as one of those top players, the aliens as we used to refer. So it was a journey through WRC, going to the rallies, meeting the drivers, seeing what it was all about. I look back at my first rally. It was going to see Ken Block and Kimi Räikkönen back in 2011, and that was great fun. Nearly got lost in a forest and left there overnight, and then ended up having to get picked up by some random guy and taken to a Welsh town where it was like an American Werewolf in London. They didn't like outsiders, and it was a bit weird. I felt like I was in some Wrong Turn movie, and then had a 6-hour drive back to base. Wow. Anyway, that's another story. So we've come to this point now. We'd also had another lengthy drive, actually, after Llandudno. That was quite, when you're visiting rallies, you do end up on some long drives through the countryside, which can be a touch bumpy and long. So wonderful journey to this point. I've enjoyed it. We get to WRC Generations, and it's the game that caps it all off. It's a game that, if you look at what they achieved from WRC 5, all of the changes and improvements and technology improvements to WRC Generations, it's been a massive step. And I, for one, would love to have seen what their next generation would have been. When you're seeing where it is now, where would it have been with another few years break and then the next generation version, and where we would have gone with the technology in the next gen. I think it's great that you have different companies competing with Rally, and hopefully Kiloton will continue to develop their rally technology, because they've got really good tech and really good ideas and great passion for making it. The rally audience is not always easy to get some things across to, because they have, I remember speaking to rally fans and them saying the force feedback isn't as good, or isn't as good as game X, whatever that is. And generally it's dirt rally, and people like what they're good at. They like what they like, but is that realistic? A lot of us will never know, because we have a perception of what realism is like. We have a perception of what a rally driver goes through. All I can tell you is that if it's intuitive, it works. So if I'm braking and it feels authentic to my body, and I'm accelerating and it feels authentic, and I'm turning the wheel and the car is doing what I expect it to do, it's moving in a way that seems natural to me, then we have a balance of physics that is working well. And that's the basis of video game development, is it's taking things which are slightly different, maybe sounds. We need more sounds in the car that perhaps you don't have in real life, or certain elements to do with the screen and the HUD. There's always changes that need to be made to give you that feeling at home that in a real car you're feeling through your body. It's not visual at all. So there's always going to be these minor changes. I think it's tough for the developers that obviously the market leader on audio is Codemasters, and that's always going to be the benchmark until it's beaten. And that's tough for any developer to come up against. If only it was just as quick as let's just change the audio. It will take many years, and I think when you look at the 25-year head start that Codemasters have, it's almost insurmountable. But I remember these same conversations happening with people who wanted Milestone out of business years ago. Milestone can't do it, the graphics and sound are terrible, they should have the license taken away. When they did have the license taken away, people complained because they saw where Sebastian Loeb Rally was going, how good the rally game was. The audio was terrible, but the game was good. And then of course it's too late, we've moved on to another developer and so on. So these developers will get there. They have the passion, they just need the support from gamers. And quite often it's really hard to get support in comments. It's much easier to write a negative comment than a positive comment, and very rarely do people give credit where it's due. And that's why when people say, oh, it's the same game every year, but it couldn't be further from it. There are huge changes. Why isn't this stage in the game? Why isn't that stage in the game? And you think that needs years of planning, huge amounts of work. It's not as simple as let's just click our fingers and whack it in the stage after a couple of days. And it's the same with replicating real rally stages. The work involved in accurately mapping and building these locations. It's not like a racetrack. A racetrack is 1 minute, 1 minute 30, 1 minute 40. A rally stage is 3, 4, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is. Huge landscapes that is vast in scale. One rally is probably the equal to the entirety of Project Cars in terms of distance and aspects you need to model. One rally is probably the same as the entire Formula One circuit. So in terms of modeling, people compare to Richard Burns' Rally, which has almost seen 15 years of mod development. It's very difficult to compare with things like that. Let's see where WRC Generations is in 15 years of mod development. It will look, no doubt, better and better. But either way, it's been a wonderful journey, and credit where credit is due. Kiloton have done a fantastic job to improve the technology and continue to do so, and I look forward to their future projects and whichever way they go. For me, it's been a wonderful journey in terms of seeing rally development over the last 12 years. I've enjoyed testing all of the new games. I've enjoyed giving you guys feedback based on all of my experience, and that covers thousands of different games I've tested over the years, hundreds of racing games on Team VVV, maybe even 1,000+ racing games on here, as well as some real rally driving training and testing experience. I get in the car and I drive and I think I'm fast, then a rally driver takes me out and as ever makes you realise that actually you can get a lot closer to that tree than you realised. But either way, it's been wonderfully enjoyable over these years, and as I look forward now to the future of WRC, I look forward to Codemasters taking it on. I think we're going to see obviously the amazing audio and the feeling of being in the cars. We're going to see that next step forward in graphical technology. We'll probably blow our socks off in terms of where that is, and we'll see where Codemasters are going in terms of stage design. I hope they can bring all of that together. I think given the access I've had to rally for the last 10 years, I say it's been a huge privilege. I don't necessarily think I'll have that next year. I think you're going to see a lot more FIFA YouTubers and F1 YouTubers taking over, and I'll be in the background somewhere. But I don't think it'll be quite the same for me anymore. And so for me, it's a farewell, if you like, from the top end of the grid, as it were, in terms of rally coverage, and falling out of contention next year. I'll be in the same boat as Daniel Ricciardo. But I wanted to share that. I wanted to share that journey, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed all the content, the hundreds of rally videos I've put up over the last 10 years, and continue to enjoy the content on the channel. I will be back soon, as soon as I can, doing streaming and putting up more videos on the channel. And considering what the future of the channel is as well, there will be some changes there. But either way, that's it from me on this look at WRC, a journey of WRC, and a look at WRC Generations. I'll be back with more review content as well as testing the various consoles, modes and aspects in the next coming days and weeks. And I hope you stick around and give me your feedback, because again, it's great for the developers to get that. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon.